Hi, my name is Amanda, and I am a Chef Andrew Scholar for Debris-Free Oceans, where we strive to inspire local communities to responsibly manage the life cycle of plastics and waste as part of a global initiative to eradicate marine debris. Engaging with the community through education is just one of the many ways that Debris-Free Oceans is involved in helping to solve the plastic pollution crisis. Towards the end of my presentation, I'll be discussing more about what you could do and ways that you can be involved in helping solve this problem. So this image might look familiar to you. This is our home, the Milky Way galaxy. In our home, there are 400 billion stars. And that's a pretty big number. Think about how many you see when you look up in the night sky. But I have a question for you. Do you think that there are more pieces of plastic in the ocean or stars in the Milky Way galaxy? If you guessed pieces of plastic, you would be correct. So there are 60 times more pieces of plastic in the ocean than stars in the Milky Way galaxy, for a total of 24.4 trillion. So if you thought that 400 billion was a big number, just imagine how huge 24.4 trillion is. I really like this picture with our fish and our crabs. Imagine when they're looking up in the big blue ocean, they see the microplastics as constellations and little tiny specks, just as we see the stars. That really makes you think about how much there really is. And what's scary is that this number is likely an underestimation because the amount of plastic in our ocean is rapidly increasing, to the point that back in 2014, when they made this same estimation, it was estimated that there was only 13 times more pieces of plastic than stars. Now it has jumped to 60 times. And plastic is increasing so fast that it's predicted that by 2025, there will be 1 pound of plastic for every 3 pounds of fish in the ocean. And by 2050, it's estimated that the pounds of plastic will surpass the pounds of fish. So this is a video here playing that was taken by 4Ocean, and it illustrates how severe plastic pollution is in areas around the world. So you cannot even see the Guatemalan coastline because of how dense the plastic waste is. And Guatemala is home to the largest landfill in Central America. And so you might be thinking, okay, but this is happening somewhere else in the world. It doesn't affect me. But the reality is that this is also a local problem. So since 2018, the total weight of trash collected by local cleanup groups is equivalent to the weight of a Boeing 757. Think about how big that thing is flying up in the air, and we've collected trash worth of it. And Debris-Free Oceans alone has picked up over 50,000 pounds of trash. And if you still don't believe me, these are pictures and videos that were all taken right here in our backyard. Miami has a really serious waste problem. The average person in Miami-Dade County produces nearly double the amount of waste as the average American. And these here are the top 10 items that cleanup groups around the world have collected. This particular data comes from a single day in 2019. And I'm going to give you a minute to think. What do all 10 of these items have in common? Yeah, so we see we have food wrappers, cigarette butts, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, straws, plastic cups, plastic grocery bags, plastic takeaway containers, other plastic bags, and plastic lids. The common item is that they are all made from plastic. Yes, even cigarette butts have plastic in them. And another similarity between these is that they are all typically used for only about 5 minutes and then discarded. So these are most commonly single-use products. And even though they're only used for about 5 minutes, they'll remain in our environment for longer than we are around, longer than our grandkids will ever be around, and even longer than our great-grandkids. Which begs the question, is 5 minutes of convenience really worth over 500 years of hardship for our planet? In my opinion, no. And we see similar trends here in Miami, where the majority of marine debris that's collected is plastic, and a lot of it comes from food packaging. So, this was from a recent study that was done. 97% of the debris that was collected was plastic. So, I've been talking a lot about plastic already, but can anyone actually tell me what plastic is? Do you know what it is? So, typical plastics are synthetic materials that are made from oil and gas. And it's this very long and extensive process to produce plastic. So, oil and gas is first extracted from the ground, then it's transported to industrial facilities where it is refined into building block molecules that are known as monomers. Then these monomers are combined to form plastic polymers that are then able to be shaped into a product that is then shipped to the grocery store for you to pick it out and take it home. So this is a graphic here on the left that kind of summarizes that whole crazy long process, and it makes you really realize how long and extensive this process is and how ridiculous it is for us to think that all of this effort is easier or less work than simply just washing one singular spoon. And so, how did all of this plastic get here? Why is it so popular? Time for a brief history lesson. So, the first fully synthetic plastic was produced in 1907. This means that plastics have not even been around for about a fifth of the time that they are expected to remain on our planet. Remember, they're going to last here for at least 500 years. And so plastics were actually not popularized until the 1950s, so quite a few years later, after World War II. And this happened for a few reasons. So, one of the reasons is that during the war, petrochemical factories made a lot of plastic to create piping around the wires that are found in war machinery. Also, after the war, the oil industry needed to find a new demand for materials, so it started creating single-use plastics. And another reason is that women had started taking on new roles outside of the household, so single-use tableware helped relieve them from time spent like doing the dishes. And so they thought that this was a fantastic invention, and single use plastics were celebrated. This is a cover from Life magazine. Now we know it as Time magazine, and this was from 1955. So they called it a throwaway culture, and they thought that everything was great. But unfortunately, plastics do come with problems. So, since they have only been around in high quantities for a few decades, no microorganisms have evolved to biodegrade them. So, unlike this banana up here, which will break down into elements like carbon and water, plastics will only break apart into smaller and smaller pieces that never go away. And this is because they're composed of strong carbon to carbon bonds. So this process is known as photodegradation, and it's when sunlight, waves, and winds break apart plastics into smaller particles known as microplastics. So you can think about it as if you had a chain of paper clips and you can take each paper clip apart, but at the end of the day, it'll always be a single paper clip. It will never change what it is. Or same thing, if you have a piece of paper and you keep tearing it into smaller and smaller pieces, there's always still going to be something there. You'll always have that tiny piece, but it won't just vanish. And so photodegradation, as I mentioned, it creates microplastics, and it can get even smaller into particles called nanoplastics. And just like a diamond, these plastics are forever. They'll just keep getting smaller until the point that they're invisible to the naked eye, so we need microscopes to detect them, but they're still there. And microplastics aren't only created through photodegradation, we also actually create tiny pieces of plastic intentionally. One example are nurdles, which might sound like a super adorable word, but it's a word for something pretty horrible. So nurdles are pre-production plastic pellets. So this is what your plastic bottle is before it is a plastic bottle. So plastic producers ship and sell them to manufacturers, where then they're melted and molded into the common products that we see today in our stores. But if you use your creativity a little bit, what do nurdles look like? So those are what we see here in the fish's mouth and what we see here below the crab. Yeah, so they look like fish eggs, which is a common food item for many marine organisms. You could imagine why that would be problematic. What's worse is that these pictures are from a container ship spill off the coast of Sri Lanka. And when nurdle spills occur, essentially no action is taken. And it's not just nurdles and pre-production plastic that are microplastics, but we even create microplastics, or used to create microplastics, for our facial products, for our toothpaste. So if you remember those Clean and Clear face washes with those blue beads, those used to be made out of plastic. So we were washing our faces with plastic, and that plastic was washing down into our sink. It was too small to be treated and just ending up into our ocean. Thankfully, people realized how horrible this was and they were outlawed. So it's a really great example of how we can ban unnecessary plastics and move towards a more sustainable future, because now these items have been replaced with more natural items such as bamboo sheets. And so these little microplastics and plastics in all different forms are found pretty much everywhere. They've been found way up high at the top of the French Pyrenees Mountains. They've been found deep below in the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known region of the ocean. And they've even been found in the most remote areas, like Antarctica, where they found plastic in all samples of freshly fallen snow that was collected. This was a study that was done just last year. And they've even been found in the most extreme of climates, like the desert. The United Arab Emirates, it's estimated that 1 in every 2 camels that dies has plastic in its stomach. And since plastic is everywhere, it's also in pretty much everything. It's even been found in 90% of table salt. And much of our clothing, like nylon and polyester, are synthetic plastic fibers that can leach microplastics into the water every time we wash them. And these microplastics are too small to be filtered by waste treatment plants, so think about where those end up. Most car tires are made with synthetic rubber that contains plastic, so even just driving your car releases thousands of microplastic particles into the environment. Plastics have even been found in the human brain. Just think about how scary that is. And to make things even more frightening, plastic production is only increasing. Half of the plastic ever produced was made in the last 20 years, which is my entire lifetime. And plastic production is expected to quadruple by 2050, according to the UN Environment Program. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, yes, there's a lot of plastic, but it's fine. I recycle, so this is all in good hands. But recycling is actually a pretty failed reality. So it's not, recycling is not a way to justify the amount of waste that we consume, because in reality, only about 8% of the plastic ever made has been recycled. And only about 2% of the plastic that is made is turned into something of equal or higher value. So this is a figure here on the left that shows EPA data of plastic waste management in the United States. And as you can see, a majority goes to the landfill. So we're looking at this gray area right here. So one of the main reasons why recycling rates are so low is high contamination. So recycling is not very easy, and the average person often does not know how to recycle correctly, which means that people end up throwing non-recyclable items into their recycling bin. This can contaminate all the other items that are in the bin, which causes the whole bin to get sent to the landfill. Another reason why recycling rates are so low is that plastic items can have very different chemical makeup and forms. So this is a table here on the left, and it shows how many recycling facilities in the United States accept different types of plastic. And as you can see, pretty much the only item that is largely accepted are plastic bottles and jugs. So everything here in that blue box, like plates, straws, cutlery, and more, are barely recycled in the United States. Less than 10% of recyclers accept this type of plastic. And so from that last table, we saw that plastic bottles are one of the only items that can be legitimately claimed as recyclable in the United States. But in Miami-Dade County, we're only recycling less than 1% of these items, which just tells us that in Miami-Dade County, recycling is not nearly efficient enough to keep up with the amount of waste that we're producing, which, if you remember back to the beginning of my presentation, is double than the amount of waste of the average American. And so, okay, recycling is flawed. Some people might think that as long as it ends up in the landfill, it's not causing any problems. But landfills are not a solution either because they are running out of space. By 2029, South Dade landfill is projected to reach capacity, and we're going to be expanding our landfills, but this is not a sustainable way to go. We can't just keep opening up and expanding more landfills. Eventually, we're just going to be living surrounded by our trash, and that's pretty disgusting. I don't want that. And even with waste management, 2 to 3 garbage trucks worth of trash enter the ocean every single minute. And most of this is coming from the land. So 80% of marine debris is from land-based sources. So I'm going to play this video here. It was taken in Guatemala, and it's a river of plastic that eventually, if this plastic is not stopped, it's going to end up straight into our ocean. Oops. One moment. And so, in fact, every year, the weight of 6 Empire State Buildings worth of plastic is entering our ocean from rivers. So, to help you understand this kind of flow, let's look over here to this map of the United States watershed. So, I specifically want us to look at this pink region right here in the middle. These are all areas that are connected to the Mississippi River, which means that any plastic that is disposed in this region will be transported directly to the Gulf of Mexico if it is not stopped. So that means that even landlocked areas are contributing to marine pollution. And here in Miami-Dade County, our government website mentions that stormwater is not filtered or treated before entering Biscayne Bay. So any waste that ends up in our storm drains, like in these pictures right here, or in our canals, it's most likely going to go straight into our ocean. And we want to point out that plastic pollution does not always come from intentional littering. It's not people just directly throwing bottles onto the ground, although that does happen. Sometimes even efforts to reduce litter ironically produces more. So for instance, trash can flow out from public bins and even from garbage trucks. And even something as simple as just opening a food wrapper can release thousands of microplastics into the environment. So, what does all of this mean for our planet? I'm going to be breaking it down into the impacts of the life cycle of a plastic product, starting from production, then we're going to go to use and disposal. So a lot of the focus on plastics is at the end here, so waste management and waste in the ocean, but in reality, the entire life cycle of a plastic product is harmful. So, starting with production. The plastic production process significantly contributes to the climate crisis. Adding just 2 new plastic production plants has the same impact as adding 800,000 new cars to the road. And plastic production also impacts human health. 3/4 of the chemicals that are associated with plastic production are linked to impacting skin, eyes, liver, respiratory, and gastrointestinal systems. And of these health impacts previously discussed, they are most oftenly disproportionately felt by BIPOC communities. Here at Debris Free Oceans, we find that it is more important to hear from these individuals directly, so we are going to be playing this video for you all.
Who benefits and who bears the burden of petrochemicals?
We were never sick until the first plant came when I was in the 8th or the 9th grade.
The majority of incinerators are in communities of color and low-income communities.
Indonesia is a major dumping ground for US waste.
Plastic is killing us, and it's not killing us equally.
Plastic disproportionately impacts Black and brown and low-income communities.
My neighbor on my right side died. Neighbor on my left side died. How many more have to die?
Everybody has, to some extent, accepted it as normal. This is not normal.
These legislative policies that would move us towards zero waste, that is a critical piece of the justice that we need.
Give us back our life. Give us back our livelihood.
Okay, so this is a very powerful video, and it is just one of many stories of people that are experiencing problems like this. You could read more about it on toxictours.org and hear from more people in frontline communities. So a lot of people don't realize how big of a social justice issue plastic really is. So have you ever heard about Cancer Alley? Okay. So Cancer Alley is a petrochemical corridor along the Mississippi River in Louisiana. There are more than 200 petrochemical plants in this predominantly Black area. So let's take a look at this image over here. You can see that air toxicity levels directly correlate with the percentage of Black residents. So this darker red area over here on the left side is the area with higher air toxicity, and the area over here in the darker blue color is the area with higher percentage of Black residents. So of the 10 census tracts with the highest cancer rates in the nation, 7 of them are found in Cancer Alley. And this is not new information. We've been knowing about these issues since 1987, and it is still going on today. Formosa Plastics is trying to build a new facility in Cancer Alley that was not permitted in Taiwan. Okay, now we will be moving on to the impacts of plastic use. So, how is plastic affecting our health? A 2019 study found that we ingest about 5 grams or 1 credit card worth of microplastics every single week. And this is because plastics are found in a lot of our food, including seafood and meat. And plastics can also leach from packaging into what we consume. The annual microplastic ingestion actually even doubles if you use plastic bottled water, which is why I tell a lot of people, at the very least, if you want to change anything right now, start using a reusable water bottle because at least you won't be consuming double plastic than the average person. You can significantly reduce the amount. So, okay, we're consuming a lot of plastic, but what does this mean for our health? The truth is, we're not really sure just how bad it is yet, but the studies that have been coming out are pretty alarming. So, in the lab, microplastics have been shown to damage human cells, and they've been found in human blood, which means that they're most likely being transported to all of our vital organs. And they've even been found in placentas, which means that we are passing down plastic to our children before they are even being born. And it's not just the plastic itself that is harmful, but plastics contain additive chemicals to change their plastic's properties, which are very harmful. So, have you ever heard of BPA? Yeah, so bisphenol A or BPA is an endocrine disruptor that mimics hormones, and they have been banned in baby products because of their ability to interfere with the development of these young children. But since the BPA ban, new additives have come to the market, and early research is indicating that they are likely just as harmful as BPA is. So, of these plastic use impacts previously described, they are likely more prominent in minority communities. One reason for this is that minority communities are often faced with food deserts, and with fewer options for food, it's more difficult to avoid plastic packaging. Okay, now we're moving on to disposal. So plastics emit greenhouse gases no matter where they end up, whether it be in landfills, they're recycled, incinerated, or even in the environment. So researchers found that when exposed to solar radiation, plastics emit greenhouse gases when they photodegrade in fresh and salt water. And microplastic pollution can also hinder the ocean's capacity to absorb and buffer our greenhouse gas emissions. You might have been pretty familiar with the Save the Turtles campaign, but it's not just the turtles we have to save. So over 900 species of marine life are harmfully impacted by plastic pollution. Plastic harms marine life by entrapping or cutting them, and when plastic is mistakenly ingested by an animal, it can lead to starvation because the animal is tricked into believing it's full, or it could even choke. And plastics are also vectors for disease. So this is an image here of a coral colony that is it's currently a diseased coral colony and it's in contact with plastic. So there was a study that was done and it found that the likelihood of disease for a coral increases from 4 to 89% when a coral is in contact with plastic. And this is the hermit crab story. It's a sad tale of how plastic pollution could severely harm an entire species. So when a hermit crab dies, they release a chemical that attracts other hermit crabs to help them find new shells. And the sad part is that hermit crabs are now trying to use plastic as shells, and then they're dying and they're trapped in these shells and they're attracting more hermit crabs to an area of probably higher amounts of plastic. So they are now being led to experience the same fate. So what was once this evolutionary advantage to these hermit crabs is now causing a series of mortality events. And 1 million hermit crabs have been found to die from plastic entrapment every 2 years on just 2 tropical islands that were studied. And this is affecting our animals locally. So this year, a beached whale in the Florida Keys was found to contain plastics in its stomach. And almost all stranded loggerhead sea turtles in the Florida Panhandle were found to have plastic in their stomachs as well. We all love manatees, right? Let's watch this video.
With our friend out here munching on the seagrass that we just came out here to clean. Munch away, friend.
So I'm grateful for our friend to be there to pick up that bottle cap for us, but manatee videos are suddenly less adorable when we're seeing them trying to eat plastic that we put there. So incineration is very harmful to us, and they have historically been placed in Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. One of the earliest reports on environmental justice in the United States found that race was the #1 predictor of where a hazardous waste facility will be found. This is also something that has been seen locally. So this is the incinerator called Old Smoky that used to operate in the predominantly Black West Grove. And it has been linked to a cancer cluster in the Grove that researchers are now investigating. Not only is incineration a social justice issue, but recycling is one as well. Most recycling does not take place within the United States. We instead sort our waste here and then sell and ship it to other countries to recycle. And we used to send the majority of our recyclable scrap to China, but in 2017, they stopped accepting most of it. Since then, we started sending our waste to countries that lack the infrastructure to handle it, where they are setting up illegal and unsafe recycling plants. And plastic disposal is harmful to our economy. We actually have a lot of money to make from just cleaning up our coastlines. I mean, just think about it. Would you rather visit a nice, pristine beach or one that is covered in trash? Okay, so I know that that was all quite intimidating, a lot of information that might be a little bit upsetting, but the great news is that there are so many amazing solutions that you can be part of to help solve all of these problems. So the best thing and the easiest thing that we can do is reduce our consumption of single-use plastics and other disposables by using reusable items. So I always bring my reusable water bottle with me and my cutlery kit, as well as my tote bag. So I have everything here in this picture. And I make sure when I go to Starbucks, I have my Starbucks cup, and I even save 10 cents on my refills. So it's a very easy way to avoid plastic because when I go to get takeout, I don't need to get some forks. I already have mine in my bag. And if I go grocery shopping, I can just put my groceries straight into my tote bag. And think about how much water I'm saving, how much money I'm saving from using my reusable bottle instead of buying so many water bottles. Yeah, like I'd love to hear what you do to reuse, and maybe you have some ways that you reuse that are not up here. I would love to hear that. And so sometimes it is very difficult to avoid getting plastic. But if you do come across something that you are considering throwing out, maybe think first to repurpose it into something new. This helps prevent it from being sent to the landfill or potentially ending up in our environment. So these are so many cute examples. I really love the bottle with you just cut a bottle's top off and you can turn it into a cute plant and decorate it with cute little animals. Or you can even turn an old t-shirt into a tote bag or an old water bottle into a bird feeder. The possibilities are really endless. Something else that you can do is you can get involved with local organizations that are cleaning up our oceans and working to prevent future waste from reaching our coast. So there's a lot of organizations in Miami to get involved with. All of them are equally as awesome. Obviously, I would love if you supported debris-free oceans. But I want to make sure you realize that the weight of the world is not just on our shoulders. It's not just on you, the individual, to solve the plastic pollution crisis. We need to do this all together. So we need our businesses to get involved and help provide consumers with plastic-free options. Corporations and businesses are already taking really great steps to reduce virgin plastics. And so you should be sure to vote with your dollar and support these businesses. So these are just a few really great plastic-free businesses. There's Verde, which is a sustainable market, and EcoPod is a really cool refill station where you can even fill up your laundry detergent. And there's even a really cool new zero waste delivery service that is coming to Miami called The Rounds.
What if you could worry less about your weekly shopping list full of all the boring stuff? What if those essentials just appear without the boxes or the plastic? At the Rounds, we are challenging the way that we currently think about household essentials. The Rounds is here to lighten your load, lessen your carbon footprint, and clear some mental mess for more important things, because we know there's a lot going on. Like a lot. The last thing you need to stress about is the stuff under your sink. Try the Rounds and see that you don't have to pay more for better. We're proving sustainability and convenience can be friends after all.
I'm very excited to subscribe to The Rounds. And it's not just on us, it's not just on businesses. We also need our government on board. We need our government to help support businesses as they eliminate single-use plastics. The good news is that elected officials in Miami Beach have created Plastic-Free Miami Beach, and the elected officials of Miami-Dade County have created Plastic-Free 305. So both of these initiatives are voluntary business certifications programs that help recognize, highlight, support local businesses that have voluntarily eliminated certain single-use plastics from their operations. You can even go online to both of these websites listed here, and you can find new businesses to support. Remember, vote with your dollar and really just let them know how great of a job they're doing so that they're encouraged to keep going and maybe even inspire other businesses around them to do so. And so we can also play our part in helping support and advocate for legislation that is helping to reduce our plastic. So the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act was the first comprehensive plastic-related bill that was introduced to Congress in 2021. It includes so many amazing things like producer responsibility, container refunds, bag fees, minimum recycled content requirement, and it wants to standardize recycling labeling. This is a fantastic bill that hopefully will come back in session again. And in Florida, we have a lot of work to do legislation-wide. So there is currently a statewide preemption on banning plastic bags and containers, which basically, in other words, means that we have a ban on banning plastic in Florida. The good news is that there are loopholes. So for example, you can ban anything that's not a container. So a straw counts because it has two open ends. And you can also ban plastic on city property. So for example, like City Hall or City Park. And so following this little loophole, over 20 South Florida municipalities have banned plastic straws, which shows us that our legislators do want to ban plastic. They just have a really big roadblock when it comes to up at the state level. So here is an informational slide about Plastic Free 305. There's 3 tiers as part of this program. Tier 3 being complete removal of all plastic from the business, and Even to qualify just for tier 1, all a business has to do is pledge to remove one item, or maybe they already did so. So some eligible items are drinking bottles, lids, straws, food wrappers, and more. And they get a nice decal that they could put up on their window, which is really nice brand image. And they even get a lot of resources provided to help make it easier for them to go plastic free. And there's also a lot of very creative inventions to help recapture trash, like the sea cleaners yacht that we see here. There's new innovative stormwater drains in Miami that would help capture the plastic and prevent it from ending up into our oceans. And there's also the super cool Mr. Trash Wheel in Baltimore that helps clean up our water for us. Hopefully, one day we'll get one here in Miami too. So again, voting with your dollar is so important. There are so many brands that make really great use of plastic and they turn it into penny boards or pants or shoes. And using this kinds of products that are made from recaptured ocean plastic helps give us a market for recycling and making really cool products that are helping eliminate waste. They're a win-win. And so, last but not least, best solution, in my opinion, is education. So that's why at Free Free Oceans, we work to incorporate education into everything that we do, whether it's talking to schools or hosting beach cleanups or even on social media. Because many people don't know the ins and outs of the plastic pollution crisis, so it's our responsibility to spread the word so that everyone is able to make informed consumer choices to support the health of the environment and our community. So with that being said, make sure you go tell your friends and family about what you learned, or maybe even share this presentation with them. And now just wrapping up with my space theme from the beginning of my presentation, want to leave on a positive note. Just remember that we can do it. And if we could send man to the moon, why can't we save our world from plastic pollution? And so thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check us out on social media or visit our website. And you can always email me if you have any questions. And here are some QR codes to our surveys. And yeah, thank you.